The scent of freshly mown grass, the warmth of the afternoon sun filtering through the kitchen window, the faint hum of our dishwasher. These were the subtle, comforting textures of my life, the quiet tapestry of a perfectly ordinary, perfectly happy existence. Or so I believed. My husband, Mark, was everything I thought I wanted. Stable, successful, charmingly boyish, even in his late 40s, with a laugh that could fill a room and a way of making me feel like the only woman in the world. We'd built this life together over 15 years of marriage, a beautiful home nestled in a quiet, tree-lined suburb, careers that afforded us comfort and security, and a future we'd meticulously planned, brick by financial brick. We talked about our retirement, about converting the attic into a reading nook, about long trips to Tuscany. Our relationship wasn't fiery, not like the passion of youth, but it was a deep, unshakable reservoir of trust, comfort, and shared history, or so I believed. And then there was Sarah, my sister, younger than me by 5 years, a free spirit, always a little wild, a little restless. Sarah had drifted through life, a series of short-lived jobs, relationships that flared brightly and then fizzled. She'd always relied on me, on us, for support, for a place to crash when things went south. Our guest room, with its cozy queen bed and ensuite bathroom, had practically become her second home over the years, a revolving door for her latest crisis. It never bothered me. That's what family does, right? You extend a hand, you offer a safe harbor. She was my only sibling, my flesh and blood. There were times, of course, when her neediness felt like a drain, when her chaotic energy disrupted the quiet rhythm of our well-ordered home. But I dismissed it, reminded myself of the unbreakable bond of sisterhood, of the countless holidays, the shared childhood memories, the secrets only we knew. We were family. We were supposed to be there for each other, or so I believed. The first crack in my perfect facade wasn't a dramatic rupture, but a subtle tremor, almost imperceptible. It started, as betrayals often do, with an insidious shift in atmosphere. Mark, usually so open, so quick with a playful jab or a story from his day, became distant. He'd spend longer hours at the office, attributing it to a big project. His phone, once a casual fixture on the kitchen counter, was now always in his pocket, face down. He'd become jumpy, flinching when I'd lean over his shoulder, clearing his throat a little too often when I asked about his day. Normal, I told myself. Work stress, mid-life malaise. We all go through it. Sarah, too, was different. She'd always been affectionate, prone to dramatic hugs and effusive compliments. Now, she was almost too quiet, her eyes darting away when I caught her gaze, a strange tension settling around her whenever Mark entered the room. They both seemed to be moving in a different orbit, speaking a language I couldn't understand, leaving me feeling like an outsider in my own home. My intuition, a quiet whisper at first, began to scream. It wasn't about a missed call or a strange text. It was about the way they'd exchange glances, quick and furtive, like conspirators. It was the way Sarah would sometimes linger a moment too long when Mark would hand her a glass of water, their fingers brushing, a micro-expression passing between them that I couldn't quite decipher, but felt in my bones. It was the night I woke up to an empty bed, Mark nowhere to be found, only to hear faint whispers from the downstairs living room. When I went to investigate, he was there, talking to Sarah, who was wrapped in a blanket, looking flushed. "Couldn't sleep," he mumbled, a little too quickly. "Just grabbing some water, and Sarah was down here." It felt off, but I pushed it down, told myself I was being paranoid, that I was imagining things. my sister, my husband, the two people I trusted most in the world. It couldn't be, could it? The real moment, the one that shattered everything, came on a Tuesday evening. I was due to fly out for a work conference in Seattle, a quick 3-day trip. Mark had dropped me off at the airport, giving me a perfectly normal, loving kiss goodbye. "Call me when you land, babe," he'd said, his eyes a little too bright, a little too eager. The flight was delayed, then finally canceled due to unexpected weather. Frustrated, exhausted, and just wanting to be home, I called Mark. No answer. I called again, straight to voicemail. A knot tightened in my stomach. I hailed a cab, determined to surprise him, perhaps snuggle up on the couch with a movie and forget about the travel chaos. The drive home felt long, each street lamp casting longer, more ominous shadows. My stomach churned with a feeling I couldn't name, a premonition that felt colder than the drizzling rain outside. I let myself in with my key, the silence of the house deafening. A subtle tremor ran through me. Mark's car was in the driveway. The lights were on in the living room. I walked quietly, cautiously, the floorboards seeming to creak louder than usual under my weight. As I approached the living room, a soft murmur of voices reached my ears. Not just one, but two. A woman's voice, low and throaty, and then his laugh, Mark's laugh, the one that used to make me feel safe. It was coming from our bedroom. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. My legs felt like lead, but I forced myself forward, one agonizing step after another. The bedroom door was slightly ajar, a sliver of light escaping. I pushed the door open just enough to see, and the world fractured. The image that seared itself into my memory, that burned itself behind my eyelids, was of Mark, my husband, naked, his body intertwined with another, and that other body, slender and pale, was undeniably Sarah, my sister. Her hair, usually a wild tangle, was spread across my pillow. Her arm, adorned with the tiny tattoo only I knew about, a delicate hummingbird on her inner wrist, was wrapped around his neck. The air left my lungs in a silent gasp. The room, our room, the sanctuary of our marriage, suddenly felt like a tomb. It wasn't just the sight, it was the chilling ease of it, the intimacy, the way they moved together as if they had done this 1,000 times. A quiet, sickening realization washed over me. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This was a long-standing, ugly secret. This was a betrayal that had been festering, poisoning the very foundations of my life, right under my nose. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. My body locked up, a statue carved from pure, unadulterated shock. The world tilted on its axis, and everything I thought I knew, everything I had built, crumbled into dust. They didn't even notice me for a moment, lost in their sordid little world. It was Mark who finally looked up, his eyes widening in horror, a strangled cry escaping his lips as he saw me, frozen in the doorway. Sarah, startled, jolted upright, her face contorting into a mask of pure, naked panic, her eyes pleading, then hardening with something akin to defiance. My stomach churned, a nauseating mix of rage and disbelief. It was all there, laid bare. The lies, the stolen glances, the late nights, the subtle shifts, the quiet whispers. Every single intuition I had pushed down, every red flag I had rationalized away, now stood before me, stark and undeniable, in the most sickening, horrifying tableau imaginable. I stumbled backward, my mind reeling. The image burned into my retina. I couldn't breathe. The air in the house, once filled with the scent of home, now reeked of cheap perfume and deceit. I didn't want to engage. Not then, not with them. The sheer audacity, The callousness of it all was too much to bear. This wasn't a sudden mistake born of passion. This was calculated, prolonged, and done in the very bed where I had slept, dreamed, and built a life with the man who now lay tangled with my own sister. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating, broken only by my ragged breath and the frantic pounding in my ears. I knew, in that single, agonizing moment, that my life as I knew it was over. But what they didn't know was that this was just the beginning of theirs ending too. My heart was shattered, yes, but a cold, steely resolve began to form in its place. A new, terrifying thought emerged from the chaos. They thought they'd gotten away with the ultimate betrayal. They had no idea they had just sealed their own agonizing fate. The silence was my shield, my weapon, the very air I breathed in the days and weeks that followed. After witnessing that grotesque scene, I didn't confront them. I didn't scream. I didn't shatter the glass of my broken life with a public meltdown. Instead, I retreated. Physically, yes, but more importantly, emotionally. I became a ghost in my own home, gliding through rooms, observing, listening, calculating. They were caught off guard by my quietness, my apparent lack of reaction. Mark, initially panicked, quickly fell back into his manipulative patterns, spewing pathetic apologies, blaming stress, even trying to suggest I was imagining things. Sarah, on the other hand, was a weepy mess, begging for forgiveness, invoking sisterhood, promising it was a one-time drunken mistake. A drunken mistake in my bed while I was supposedly flying across the country. The sheer audacity of their lies fueled the fire that had begun to simmer beneath my composure. My initial shock gave way to a cold, burning clarity. This wasn't just about my hurt feelings. This was a desecration of my marriage, my home, my family, and my future. And they weren't just going to get away with it. They were going to pay. But not with tears, not with shouting. They were going to pay with everything they valued, everything they thought they had secured. I needed to move with precision, with stealth. This wasn't a fight I could win with emotion. This was a war, and I needed intelligence, strategy, and impeccable execution. My first step was deceptively simple. I became a spy in my own life. I started small. I bought a discreet voice recorder, small enough to fit in my pocket or be left on a shelf. I set it to record during conversations, particularly when Mark and Sarah were around or when Mark was on the phone. I started paying closer attention to their phone habits. While Mark was in the shower, I'd quickly glance at his texts, screenshots becoming my secret trophies. Sarah, usually so careless, now kept her phone glued to her hand, but a few accidental glimpses showed me enough. Late-night messages, plans for clandestine meetups, even pictures. Nothing explicit, but enough to paint a picture of an ongoing affair, a shared secret life that stretched back months, maybe even a year. The timeline of their betrayal began to solidify, turning my gut feelings into undeniable facts. Next, I turned my attention to the financial aspect. Mark had always handled most of our joint accounts, a common setup in many marriages. I trusted him implicitly. That trust was now a gaping wound. I began subtly requesting access to joint statements, claiming I wanted to learn more about our investments or budget better for our future. Mark, still seemingly relieved by my lack of overt anger, readily complied. What I found was a slow, steady bleed. Small, seemingly innocuous withdrawals from our shared savings, disguised as business expenses or home repairs that never materialized. Larger transfers to unmarked accounts that raised red flags. These funds, I suspected, were not just for secret dates. They were funding Sarah's lifestyle, perhaps even helping her pay off some of her ever-present debts. This wasn't just infidelity, it was financial abuse. I called a lawyer, not just any lawyer, but one specializing in high-asset divorces and complex financial cases. I didn't tell Mark. I made my appointments during his late nights at work or during my yoga classes. I chose a firm in a neighboring county, far enough that there was no chance of running into anyone we knew. The first meeting was terrifying, laying out the raw, ugly truth. The extent of the betrayal felt like tearing open old wounds. But my lawyer, a sharp, empathetic woman named Eleanor, listened patiently, her expression unreadable. When I finished, she simply nodded. "This is not just infidelity, Ms. Davies," she said, her voice calm. "This is a breach of fiduciary duty, and given the involvement of your sister, it complicates things, but also strengthens your position significantly." Eleanor walked me through the intricate dance of asset division in our state, the nuances of spousal support, and most importantly, the strategy for targeting Mark's retirement accounts. His 401k and other investment portfolios were substantial, built over a 25-year career. They represented a significant portion of our marital assets, potentially millions of dollars. Eleanor explained that while typically these are split, the circumstances of his financial misconduct and the egregious nature of the affair could influence the judge's decision, especially if I had irrefutable proof. "We need a paper trail, Ms. Davies. Everything, and silence. Do not tip your hand." And so, the silent war continued. I acted normal. I cooked dinners. I listened to Mark's mundane work stories. I even exchanged pleasantries with Sarah when she visited, forcing a smile onto my face. Every interaction a fresh betrayal, every word a hollow echo in the cavern of my planning. I continued gathering evidence, bank statements, email chains, screenshots of texts, even installing a small, discreet camera in the living room, not for their illicit activities, but to record their conversations when they thought they were alone, discussing their future, their plans, their contempt for me. The recordings were chilling, their casual dismissal of my feelings, their thinly veiled joy at getting away with it, the explicit details of their secret rendezvous. It solidified my resolve. There would be no mercy. The weeks stretched into months. Each day was a performance, each night a meticulous review of evidence, a whispered conversation with Eleanor. I learned the legal jargon, the loopholes, the arguments. I understood the power of incontrovertible proof. I even started subtly shifting some of my own independent assets into separate accounts, preparing for the financial earthquake I was about to unleash. I opened a new bank account, a new credit card, just for myself, a clean slate. I updated my will. I ensured my personal investments were secure. I even began quietly packing away personal items, sentimental pieces, things I couldn't bear to lose in the coming storm. They thought they were building a future together, while I was systematically dismantling theirs. The tension was a constant, low hum beneath my skin, an electric current of anticipation. The harder they laughed, the closer they got, the more satisfying the coming fall would be. The question wasn't if I would blow up their lives, but when and how to ensure maximum impact and maximum personal gain. I wasn't seeking revenge for revenge's sake. I was seeking justice, a reclamation of everything they had stolen, not just emotionally, but financially. My goal wasn't just to leave him, but to leave him absolutely destitute, and to ensure my sister never benefited from her vile actions. The house, our marital home, represented 15 years of my life, my stability. His retirement fund represented his future security, his legacy. I wanted both, and I was going to get them. Are you ready to witness the calculated detonation, the moment the bomb dropped and their world imploded? The moment arrived, not in a dramatic courtroom showdown, but in the quiet, sterile confines of a mediation room. Mark had finally received the divorce papers, delivered by a process server at his office, a subtle choice by Eleanor that ensured maximum public humiliation for him among his colleagues. His initial reaction, as relayed by the process server, was a mixture of disbelief and outrage. How dare I? After all these years, he still had no idea. He believed I was just angry, maybe filing for divorce out of spite, thinking he could smooth things over with apologies and promises. He was tragically, wonderfully wrong. We sat across from each other at the polished conference table, Eleanor beside me, cool and collected. Mark was agitated, his face flushed, glancing nervously at me. His own lawyer, a slick, expensive-looking man, tried to project an air of calm confidence, but even he seemed a little too eager to get straight to the negotiations. Sarah wasn't there, of course. She was safely tucked away, oblivious to the storm that was about to engulf her too. The mediator, a neutral third party, began by outlining the purpose of the session: to find common ground, to amicably divide assets. Mark jumped in, agitated, talking about reconciliation, about working through this. Eleanor, with a calm, almost serene smile, simply held up a hand. "Mr. Davies," she said, her voice clear and cutting, "before we discuss reconciliation, perhaps we should address the core issues. We have a rather extensive portfolio of evidence regarding your extracurricular activities, and specifically with Ms. Sarah's last name, your wife's sister." The air in the room thickened. Mark's face went from flushed to ashen. His lawyer, previously composed, visibly stiffened. Mark stammered, "What are you talking about? This is absurd." His voice was high-pitched, betraying his sudden panic. Eleanor simply nodded to me. I had placed a sleek, black leather-bound portfolio on the table. With a deliberate, almost theatrical slowness, I opened it. Inside, neatly organized and tabbed, was the culmination of months of silent surveillance. Exhibit A, Eleanor began, are printouts of text messages between Mr. Davies and Miss A, Sarah's last name, dating back to last spring. You can see the explicit nature of the conversations here, detailing rendezvous points, expressions of affection, and planning for your illicit relationship. She gestured to the mediator, who leaned forward, grim-faced, as she took the first sheaf of papers. Mark was staring at me, his eyes wide with a dawning horror, a silent plea in their depths that I met with a cold, unwavering gaze. Exhibit B, Eleanor continued, her voice gaining momentum, are screenshots of financial transfers, disguised as various expenses, from joint accounts to accounts held by Ms. Sarah's last name. These total approximately $35,000, funding her lifestyle, her recent trip to Europe, and even a down payment on a vehicle. The mediator's eyes widened. Mark's lawyer finally spoke, his voice strained. "Objection! This is irrelevant to asset division." Eleanor simply arched an eyebrow. "Is it, counsel? Or is it a clear pattern of financial misconduct and marital waste, a factor that is very much relevant in determining equitable distribution under state law?" Then came the clincher. "Finally, Exhibit C," Eleanor announced, pulling out a small USB drive. Audio recordings from within the marital home, detailing conversations between Mr. Davies and Ms. Sarah's last name, discussing their affair, their plans for the future, and their explicit contempt for my client, who was unknowingly providing the very roof over their heads and funds for their clandestine meetings. She handed the drive to the mediator. I suggest you listen to this, perhaps starting with the file labeled July 14th, 11:30 p.m. Mark sprang up from his chair, a strangled cry escaping his lips. You recorded me? He was no longer the confident executive, but a terrified man, stripped bare. You crazy buck! How could you? His lawyer quickly pulled him back down, whispering urgently in his ear, Mr. Davies, calm yourself. But he was beyond calm. He knew I had everything, every lie, every stolen moment, every dollar. The mediator listened, her expression growing increasingly disgusted. After a few minutes, she paused the recording and looked at Mark, her gaze filled with professional disapproval. Mr. Davies, she said, her voice flat, this changes everything. The negotiation quickly turned into a surrender. Mark's lawyer, seeing the mountain of irrefutable evidence, realized the battle was lost. The judge would not look kindly upon this. Not only was there clear evidence of egregious infidelity, but also of significant financial misconduct and intentional infliction of emotional distress, especially with the sisters' involvement. Eleanor, knowing she had the upper hand, laid out our terms. I wanted the house outright, and I wanted a substantial portion of his retirement accounts, far more than the standard 50-50 split. We argued that his financial waste and the emotional damage justified a larger share for me, to compensate for the years of deceit and the funds he diverted. The specifics of his 401k, his pension, his various investment portfolios were laid out. Millions of dollars. He fought, of course, pleaded, threatened, but Eleanor was relentless. She outlined the potential for a protracted public court battle, the humiliation, the detailed exposure of his affair with my sister in court, potentially even the ruin of his professional reputation. She mentioned the possibility of filing a separate civil suit against Sarah for financial damages and emotional distress, hinting at subpoenaing her finances, exposing her to public scrutiny. The threat was enough. Mark, his face pale and clammy, finally caved. Within weeks, the divorce was finalized. The house was mine, signed over in full, no mortgage, no questions asked, and in a settlement that stunned even some of Eleanor's colleagues, I received nearly 75% of Mark's entire vested retirement savings and investment accounts, a total sum well into the 7 figures. It was a staggering amount, a direct consequence of his betrayal and my meticulous planning. He was left with a fraction of his projected retirement, his career potentially tarnished, and his reputation shattered. And Sarah? Oh, Sarah. She called me screaming when she found out. Mark, in his rage and despair, had apparently blamed me for everything, revealing the full extent of my revenge. She accused me of being heartless, cruel, of ruining her life, of destroying their love. I simply hung up. I didn't owe her an explanation or forgiveness. She suffered the consequences of her choices, losing not just her secret lover, but also the sister who had always been her safety net, and any hope of future financial support from either of us. The family, when the true story and the legal details began to leak out, was in utter shock. Some condemned me, others quietly admired my resolve, but no one could deny the undeniable truth of what had happened. My garden, once poisoned by their treachery, was now clear. The house, once filled with their sordid secrets, was now my sanctuary, a testament to my resilience And the retirement fund, once his security, was now mine, a symbol of justice, hard-won and undeniably deserved. Was I the a-hole? Some might say so. Some might call me cold, calculating. But when you've built a life on trust, only to have it savagely torn down by the two people you loved most, you learn that justice isn't always pretty. Sometimes it's a meticulously planned, devastating financial blow that leaves the betrayers with nothing but the bitter taste of their own choices. And sometimes that's the sweetest revenge of all. What would you have done in my place? Did I go too far? Or was this the only way to truly reclaim my life and secure my future? Tell me in the comments below.